Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Misma Passion, and match day 6 of the World Cup has recently just concluded with the final game of the first round matches being played between Colombia and South Korea, and the first two matches of round 2 of fixtures between the New Zealand team and the Philippines, as well as Norway versus Switzerland. So without further ado, let's get right into these three games and see what we learned from them. The first game saw Colombia take on South Korea, with Colombia lining up in a 4-2-3-1 and Korea lining up in a 5-3-2 formation. Colombia definitely going all out for the attack, whereas Korea took a more balanced, if not more defensive style to the approach of the game. But Colin Bell, being the man who he is, he definitely had his team up to the game and up to the task to go and give Colombia one hell of a fight. As in the beginning stages of the first half, Colombia were on the back foot here, as Korea was coming at them with their hard pressing style and had a few good opportunities to potentially go and get a goal, but unfortunately that was not to be. But despite the promising start by the South Koreans, Colombia did eventually find themselves getting slowly back into the game and eventually were awarded a 28th minute penalty, which Uzme dispatched to give Colombia the early lead 1-0 going into the rest of the first half. And it wouldn't take too long for the goal to be supplemented by a very strong individual charge and wonderful strike by Colombia's Wonder Kid sensation Caicedo, who made it 2-0 for the Colombians just 10 minutes after the penalty to make sure Colombia went into the second half with a very strong and very comfortable lead of 2-0. The intensity of the proceedings did not stop in the first half, as in the second half South Korea was trying to look for a way to get themselves back into the game, and Colombia themselves was looking for a way to make sure that the game was put to bed beyond any rest. And luckily in the end for the Colombians, the match would stay 2-0 for them to pick up the 3 points and join Germany at the top of the group with 3 points apiece. Germany of course being in first place based on goal difference alone. Both teams must be credited with being very courageous in this game and being both eager to try and get out of it with a win, particularly to South Korea, who, even though they were 2-0 down before the end of the first half, they were trying to carve out many chances. With one particular moment towards the end of the first half in extra time, they just narrowly missed out thanks to some very great goalkeeping heroics there from the Colombia goalkeeper. And as for Colombia, it's a very good start to their World Cup campaign here, as again they are on par with Germany when it comes to points, and they showed a very good account of themselves as what they can do in attack and in defense. And looking forward to the next games against Morocco and Germany, they are definitely bound to be some of the most entertaining games that are going to be on show, at least in the group stages of the World Cup. The day proceeded with New Zealand taking on the Philippines here. New Zealand obviously coming off the back of their historic win against Norway here, lining up in a 4-4-2 formation, going up against the Philippines, who felt very hard done by in their 2-0 loss to Switzerland, lining up in a 5-3-2 formation. And it was evident from the beginning of the game that the win for New Zealand was highly transformative for the team, as they were the ones who were on top and completely dominating the game throughout the entirety of the first half, particularly in the 12th minute where they were so close to converting to make it 1-0 to them, but unfortunately due to the heroics of the Philippine defense, they were unable to score to make it 1-0 for themselves. However, the honors of scoring first in this match would go to the Philippines, as Golden Serena Bolden scored from a very beautiful cross with a header to give the Philippines their first ever World Cup goal, and thus becoming the first debut nation at this edition's World Cup to score. And from this point forward, the mentalities in the teams shifted as Philippines began to go more on the hunt for another goal to make sure that they have themselves a nice little cushion going into the second half of the game. And New Zealand seemed to be more of the panicking side here, as they were starting to make more frantic and unwarranted errors that were costing them against a team that, when it comes to looking at on paper, they were by far the superior side. And it would be in the second half where more concerted efforts are being made by the football ferns to get back on level terms with the Philippines, as the Philippines had been pegged back and New Zealand were coming in with wave after wave of attacks, and it would prove very vital in the 64th minute where a goal had seemingly gone in off a very good cross, but it was controversially ruled off for offside, as you can see on your screen, by VAR, as they deemed that the shoulder of the New Zealand player was offside, and the goal was unfortunately chalked off. Now, from my own personal view, I do believe that this was not the right call and it should have stood as a goal. And the consensus is pretty much the same across the footballing world, whether it's online or wherever you discuss your football. But I would like to know your thoughts about this particular decision, so please feel free to leave it in the comments. And in spite of their many efforts in the rest of the second half, New Zealand were ultimately unable to get back on level terms with the Philippines, who eventually ride out 1-0 winners and made history by getting their first win ever at the Women's World Cup. And this win by the Philippines would have ramifications in the next match, which was also a Group A match, but this time between Norway and Switzerland, with Norway lining up in a 4-3-3 and Switzerland lining up in a 4-3-2-1. Norway, of course, coming off the back of that harrowing defeat at the hands of New Zealand and looking for something out of this game to keep themselves in contention to exit the group stages and make it to the knockout stages of the tournament. But however, by the time the game was over, it looks like they were heading for the former more so than the latter, as this game, despite the promising start particularly from Switzerland, who are playing on the front foot to get themselves ahead and potentially bag themselves 6 points, the game eventually did begin to drag after this opportunity. Neither team really did their best to assert themselves, particularly in the first half, as there were so many heavy transitions without the ball entering any opposing penalty box. And eventually going into halftime, neither team looked like they wanted to win, and it would be understandable from Switzerland's point of view, as they were currently standing on 4 points and still top of the group. But for Norway, you'd have expected a little bit more urgency, as again, they were on the back foot here with no points pretty much at this rate. They were the only team in Group A without any points, so they had to have gotten something from the first half at least, but again, there was nothing to show for it. And going into the second half, despite some very good opportunities by Norway, which they started to manufacture off the back of an increased tempo and urgency in the second half, which were unfortunately scuppered by the goalkeeping heroics of Talman, the game would ultimately finish off 0-0, and Norway would end up with 1 point and Switzerland would finish off with 4 points. That means now going into the final round of group fixtures, it is pretty much all to play for in Group A, as Switzerland, even though they are ahead by 4 points, they have to contend with the fact that they're facing up against New Zealand and the Philippines, who are on 3 points each. And as for Norway, it seems that one way or another, whether they make it out of the group stages or not, their World Cup journey is going to be coming to a very quick end, as based on their performances in the last 2 games, they just don't seem to have it in them to go very deep in this tournament. And that is a very big shame, considering that they're one of the favorites to go quite deep in the tournament to begin with. Regardless of that though, Group A is definitely promising to be one of the most dramatic finishes to a group, as we have New Zealand going up against Switzerland and the Philippines going up against Norway, with the results of both of those games definitely having ramifications for the first place and second place of that group. So it's definitely going to be very dramatic and hopefully very entertaining to watch, particularly in the Philippines versus Norway game. But other than that, that will do it for today's video. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, and to continue enjoying the Women's World Cup, and I'll see you in the next video tomorrow.